The red sky over Colony Delta 7 was always filled with smoke. Broken buildings stood like ghosts. The war had ended, but pain still walked in every street. John Carter, a human supply officer, moved through the market ruins. His backpack was full of food rations. Soldiers and aliens passed by, each with cold eyes. No one had time to care. No one trusted anyone. But then, he saw her. An alien woman stood alone near the corner of a damaged wall. Her clothes were dirty and torn. She held the hands of two small alien children, both weak, both shaking. They looked like they hadn't eaten in days. She was tall, slender, with dark purple skin and silver eyes that once held pride. But now, only fear lived there. Dust covered her long hair. Her bones showed through her skin. John tried to walk past her. Many refugees begged on these streets. He had seen it before, but this time was different. The woman suddenly dropped to her knees in front of him. The children looked up at him with wide eyes. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "I have no one else, not my tribe, not my family, not even the stars. I beg you, take me." John paused. "What do you mean?" The woman lowered her head. "I do not want to be your slave. I do not ask for chains. I ask to be your wife. I will work. I will clean. I will raise your home. Just give my children a chance to live." People nearby started whispering. A few soldiers laughed cruelly. "She's broken," one muttered. "Another desperate alien trying to trap a human," said another. John looked around. Eyes were watching, judging. He should have walked away. He knew the rules. Refugees were not allowed inside the human zones unless they had work permits or bonded partners. And bonding with an alien widow? That was madness. "Get up," John said quietly. The woman didn't move. "Please, if you leave, we'll die in the night. My son has a fever. My daughter hasn't eaten in 2 days. I will do anything." John looked at the little ones, one boy, one girl. Their eyes were dull, their cheeks sunken. The boy swayed on his feet and almost fell. He cursed it under his breath. "You don't even know me," he said. "I don't care," she whispered. "No one else has looked at me with a kind face." "That's enough." John knelt beside her and touched her shoulder. She flinched, like she expected to be hit. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. Her eyes filled with tears. "My name is Valera," she whispered. "I'm John." For a moment, they simply stared at each other. A human soldier and a broken alien widow alone in a world full of hate. "Can you walk?" John asked. She nodded quickly. "Then come with me." He turned, and she stood up slowly. The children clung to her legs, not speaking. Their faces were full of silent hope. John led them through the broken streets. People whispered behind them. Some spat near their feet. One woman threw a piece of fruit at Valera's back. John didn't stop. They reached the outer zone of the human base, a temporary shelter near the walls. John opened the door to his small unit. 1 room, 2 beds, a heater, and a food locker. "Sit down," he said. Valera carefully helped her children onto the small mattress in the corner. She sat beside them, her eyes scanning the room like she expected someone to yell at her. John handed her a water bottle. "Drink, slowly." She took it with both hands and gave it first to her kids. "I'll get some food ready," he said. As he unpacked the rations, he heard the girl whisper, "Mama, is he going to send us away?" "No," Valera replied softly. "He is different." John heard it, but said nothing. Later that night, after the children had eaten and fallen asleep, Valera sat near the small heater. "Why did you help me?" she asked. John leaned against the wall. "I don't know. Maybe because I'm tired of watching people suffer while I pretend not to see." Valera looked down. "I will not be a burden." John didn't answer. She saw the photo beside his bed, a human woman smiling, holding hands with John. Was she your mate? Valera asked gently. She was, he said. Not anymore. Valera didn't ask more. Outside, the wind howled through the ruined streets. Inside, silence settled. But something had changed. John didn't say it aloud, but in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. The next morning, John woke up to silence, but not the peaceful kind. He glanced at the other side of the small room. Valera was awake already. She sat cross-legged on the floor, her head bowed, hands folded tightly. It looked like prayer. Or maybe regret. The children still slept. One had curled up beside the heater, and the other had wrapped himself in John's old coat. John rubbed his eyes. He wasn't used to having others in his space. Especially not a strange alien woman and her kids. But something in him didn't feel strange at all. He stepped outside to clear his head. Cold morning wind bit his face. The sun hadn't fully risen. Fog covered the street like a ghost blanket. Then he heard it. Are you serious, Carter? A voice behind him barked. He turned. Sergeant Malloy. Thick arms, thick neck, and no patience. I heard you brought that thing and her spawn into your room, Malloy growled. John stayed quiet. You know the rules. Refugees stay outside the wire unless they got clearance. She has none. I didn't take her in as a refugee, John said. I bonded her. Malloy blinked. You what? John forced a calm breath. She's my wife now. That makes it legal, Malloy scoffed. You're insane. She's an alien widow, John. Her kind eats their mates on some planets. John didn't laugh. She's just a mother, trying to keep her kids alive. Mark my words, she'll bring you nothing but trouble, Malloy spat. They all do. John said nothing as Malloy stomped off, muttering. When he went back inside, he found Valera scrubbing the floor with an old cloth. Her hands were raw. The children were trying to fold John's spare blanket neatly. You don't have to do that, John said. Valera looked up, startled. I must. No, you're not a servant. I must show worth, she whispered. I must not be thrown away again. Those words hit him harder than he expected. He sat down near the heater. You were thrown away before? She nodded. When my husband died, his clan told me to leave. They said I was cursed. Bad luck. A mouth with no warrior. No one wanted a widow with children. John looked at her. You said you were from a noble line? I was. She looked away. That blood means nothing now. The heater buzzed softly. The children ate quietly. Every bite they took felt like a small victory. You're safe here, John said at last. She gave a small smile. Until someone stronger decides we're not. Just then, a loud knock hit the door. Boom. Boom. John jumped to his feet. Open up. Base inspection, someone shouted. Valera froze. Her children grabbed her arms, trembling. John opened the door slowly. 2 officers stood there. Behind them, Malloy smirked. Random check, one officer said coldly. Any non-cleared aliens? In here? John stood tall. This is my wife. And these are her children. They're bonded to me. The officers glanced at each other. You'll need to prove that officially soon, one said. Or she be removed. Fine, John said. I'll file the paperwork. They left, but Mahler stayed behind, grinning. She's not worth it, Carter. You'll see. John shut the door in his face. Back inside, Valera stared at the floor. You will be punished, she whispered, because of us. He looked at her, this alien widow who had nothing, yet still held her children like a shield. Her eyes didn't plead this time. They accepted whatever pain was coming. John sighed. If I wanted comfort, I would have stayed on Earth. Valera tilted her head. Then why did you help us? I don't know, John admitted. Maybe because someone should have helped you long before me. Ending hook. That night, as the children slept and John rested with his eyes half open, Valera stared at the photo of the human woman again. Her voice barely above a whisper, she asked, "Would she have hated me?" John didn't open his eyes. "No," he said. "She would have told me to do exactly what I did." Valera stood alone outside the shelter before dawn. The air was cold, but she didn't shiver. She was used to cold. Cold floors, cold meals, cold hearts. She watched the sky as soft orange light crept over the broken colony towers. Somewhere behind the clouds was her old home, her birth world. But even if she could fly there, they would never let her land again. She heard footsteps. John had woken up. "You always wake up before sunrise?" he asked, handing her a warm drink packet. "I don't sleep much," she replied softly. "My kind remembers pain and dreams." John sat beside her on the stone steps. He didn't ask questions. "Not yet." After a long silence, Valera finally spoke. "Do you want to know why I begged you?" He looked at her, but said nothing. "I come from a noble bloodline," she said. "Not powerful like before, but still respected. I was bonded young to a warrior. I gave him 2 children. Then, he was killed during the uprising. His enemies dragged his body across our home square, and the clan blamed me." John frowned. "You? In our tradition," she continued, her voice bitter, "if a male warrior dies young, it means the female was bad luck. A weak bond. They said I was cursed, that I had caused his death by not pleasing the gods." John cursed under his breath. "That's sick. They tore off my housemark, burned it in front of me. My own mother spat on my face." Her voice broke a little. "My children were called shadows, dirty, unclean. They said if I ever came back, they'd throw me from the cliff." John stared at her, stunned. "And now," she said, her voice soft like wind, "you know the truth. I have no home. I cannot return. I have nothing to offer you but broken pieces." John said nothing for a moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small metal object. It was bent and burned. An old military tag. "This," he said, "was from a friend, my squad leader. Died saving civilians during a bombing. No one thanked him, no medals, just this tag." He handed it to her. He was human. But the world didn't care about his sacrifice. "You and I. We come from different stars, but the pain feels the same." Valera looked at the tag in her hands. "He sounds like a good man." "He was," John said. "And so are you." She blinked. "I'm not a man," John smiled faintly. "You know what I mean." Inside the shelter, the children began to wake. The little girl called out, "Mama." Valera stood, but before going inside, she turned to John. "My people threw me away. Yours might do the same. Are you sure you want to be tied to someone the stars have already forgotten?" John looked her in the eyes. "Maybe that's why we met," he said. "Because the forgotten need to find each other." Ending hook. Later that day, while John was away getting supplies, a stranger appeared near the shelter, an alien from Valera's old clan. He didn't speak. He just stared at her from the distance and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. And then he vanished into the crowd. The ration crate was empty. John stared at it for a long time. 3 food bars left. That was it. 1 per day, barely enough for 1 adult, let alone a family of 4. He rubbed his forehead and looked toward the sleeping children. They were curled together, pale and thin. Valera sat beside them, stitching up a torn shirt with thread she'd made from old curtain strings. She was quiet, focused, calm, but he could see the truth in her sunken eyes. She was starving too and hiding it. John stood up suddenly. "I'll be back," he said, grabbing his coat. Valera looked up. "Where are you going?" "Just getting some air." He didn't wait for more questions, but he wasn't going for air. He was going into the red zone. The red zone was off limits. Bombed out, lawless, crawling with scavengers. It was where damaged supplies were dumped and where the desperate went to disappear. A fence marked the border. John crouched and slipped through a hole soldiers never patched. His boots crunched over broken glass and metal. Fires burned in barrels. Shadows moved through ruined buildings. He held his breath. He wasn't a thief. He wasn't a criminal. But today, he was something else. A father who wasn't one and still felt responsible that he found a half-buried crate near an old wreck. It had a faded UN supply mark on it. He used a metal rod to pry it open. Inside, dry rice packs, protein capsules, canned liquids. Not much, but better than nothing. Then came the sound of footsteps. Fast, heavy. He turned and saw 2 men approaching. Human, worn armor. One carried a bat. The other, a knife. Well, one of them grinned. Looks like someone's stealing. From the ghost yard, John raised his hands slowly. Not looking for trouble. Too late for that, the man with the knife said. Only one reason to come here. You're feeding someone you're not supposed to. They moved closer. John's eyes narrowed. You really going to kill a soldier for a can of beans? The man laughed. Nah, we'll just leave you bleeding enough that you can't come back. They rushed him. John ducked the first swing. The knife sliced his jacket. He punched the bat wielder in the gut. The other man tackled him to the ground. They wrestled in the dirt. John reached for a metal pipe and swung blindly. Crack, one man screamed. The other fled. John stood, panting, bleeding from the forehead. He grabbed the food and limped back through the fence. By the time he returned to the shelter, the sun was setting. Valera ran to him. What happened? You're hurt. I'm fine, he grunted. Here, food. She gasped at the bag he dropped on the floor. How? I found it, he said. That's all you need to know. She helped him sit down. Her hands shook as she cleaned his wound. The children stared silently, watching the red on his shirt. You could have died, Valera whispered. For us, John winced. It was worth it. Valera looked at him, eyes wide with something she hadn't shown before. Trust. Then, the little boy stepped forward and tugged at John's sleeve. Papa, he said softly. Are you our papa now? John blinked. Valera gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Saran, no, he didn't agree to. But John just stared at the boy, then smiled. I guess I am now. Ending hook. That night, as they sat together and shared warm food for the first time in days, none of them noticed. The small red light blinking outside the shelter window. Someone was watching them and recording everything. It started with a crayon. John found it under the mattress while fixing the heater, a small green crayon, worn flat from use. Where did this come from? He asked. Valera looked surprised. Saran found it in the trash pile yesterday. He's been drawing in secret. John opened the folded paper next to it. His breath caught. It was a child's drawing 4 stick figures. One tall, one woman with long purple hair. 2 small ones in between, and under it, in shaky letters, me, Mama, Lina, Papa. John stared at it for a long moment. He didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or hide it away forever. Later that afternoon, John sat sharpening a broken tool outside the shelter. The boy, Saran, tiptoed up behind him, holding a cup of water. Here, the boy said. Thanks, kid, John said, with a smile, but the boy didn't leave. He just stood there, looking serious, like he was thinking deeply. Can I ask something? Sure. Saran looked down at the dirt. If someone saves you, feeds you, keeps you warm, does that make them your father? John paused. Sometimes. Yeah, the boy looked up at him, eyes full of hope. Then, can I call you Papa? The word hit harder than any wound John had taken in the war. He looked at the boy's small, worn-out shoes, the tiny hands that had carried food to his sister, the way he kept checking John's face for approval. And slowly, John nodded. Yeah. You can call me that. Saran smiled, brighter than the sun that day. Inside, Valera watched from the doorway. She didn't speak, but her eyes filled with quiet tears. Later that night, as the children slept, she sat beside John. I didn't teach him to say that, she said quickly. I would never. I know, John said. I don't want to trap you. You didn't. They both stared at the heater flame for a while. Then John said something he hadn't said in years. I always wanted a family. The next morning, everything changed. A transport ship landed just outside the refugee camp. Soldiers marched in. This wasn't a patrol, this was an official sweep. A loudspeaker announced, all unregistered non-human citizens must be cleared from human protection zones. Refugees without official bonding or permits will be removed within 24 hours. Valera froze. They're coming for us. John's jaw clenched. Not if I can help it. He marched into the main base office. Soldiers watched him like he was crazy. He stormed past a desk and slammed a file onto the counter. I want a legal bond registration, he said. Today. The officer raised a brow. With an alien widow and her 2 children? You're aware that makes you responsible for them. Under interspecies law, I am. The officer looked at him carefully. You sure about this, Carter? You know what people will say. I don't care what they say. He signed the forms. Valera was now by law his wife. Her children. His dependents. And yet, he still didn't expect what came next. Ending hook. That evening, a message was delivered by hand. No name, no sender, just a single note. You think they'll let you keep her? You don't know who she really is. Asterisk, the council chamber smelled like dust and metal and judgment. 12 seats, 12 commanders, human and alien alike. Cold eyes, cold voices. No mercy. John stood at the center. He didn't wear his uniform. Just a plain jacket. Bloodstains still faint on the sleeve proof of the red zone raid, but he stood tall. Beside him, Valera lowered her head. Not in shame, but in strategy. She knew how these people saw her. If she looked too proud, they'd call her arrogant. If she looked too weak, they'd call her useless. She chose silence. Commander Renz, a gray-skinned half-cybernetic, tapped the table. You've brought this creature here to request bonding rights? John spoke clearly. Her name is Valera. She is my wife. And these are her children. I've signed the papers. Papers are not enough, snapped a female officer. We need proof of real bond emotion. Unity, sacrifice, not pity. John stepped forward. She's risked her life to keep her children alive. I've risked mine to feed them. Is that not unity? Another counselor leaned forward, smirking. Tell me, Carter, what does she bring you? Strength? Power? Wealth? She's not even human. John clenched his jaw. She brings me something. No one else here ever has. Honor. She brings honor. Renz's metallic eye clicked. We've seen aliens trick humans before. There are reports she comes from a disgraced bloodline. Is that true? Valera finally looked up. It is, she said. They threw me out, called me cursed, because my husband died. Because I was left behind. A pause, even the room seemed to stop breathing. But I have not begged for pity, she continued. I begged for my children. I would have died in the dirt, if not for him. She turned to John, and he didn't touch me with chains. He touched me with kindness. Something my own people forgot. The room was still. Then one voice called out from the corner, a sharp, mocking tone. If she is really your wife, then prove it. A tall alien general stood up, his armor clinking. Not with words, with instinct, with connection. Show us something real. The room murmured. John looked at Valera. She looked at him. No words passed. Then without planning, it just happened. She reached out and gently pressed her forehead against his. A silent gesture. Alien bonding tradition. To some, it looked simple. To others, it was scandal. But to her, and now to him, it was the deepest sign of loyalty her people knew. Renz cleared his throat. Very well. He turned to the others. By authority of Colony Law 27B, and under the Emergency Refugee Protocol, we recognize this bond. Let it be written. Let it be witnessed. A few council members hissed in disapproval, but none spoke out loud. It was done. John had declared her his wife, not in secret, but before the highest seat of power on the colony, ending Hook. As they left the chamber, a man in shadows watched from a distance. He activated a communicator. Phase 1 failed, he said coldly. The human made it official. Begin Phase 2. The widow's blood still carries value. And someone wants her back. The sky turned red before the warning sirens ever screamed. Colony Delta 7 was under attack again. But this time, it wasn't rebels or looters. It was something worse. Her own people. A warship from Valera's former clan appeared from the clouds, descending fast, armed, aggressive, no signal. No mercy. They weren't here to save her. They were here to take her. In the command tent, officers shouted orders. They want the alien widow, someone barked. She carries royal blood we didn't know. They'll burn the whole colony if we don't surrender her. John stood frozen for a moment. And then he moved. He found Valera helping medics organize wounded children into the storm shelters. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She stayed. They're here for you, John sighed. You have to go into hiding. She looked at him and shook her head. I will not run again. Not this time. You'll die, he whispered. Then I die standing beside the only man who gave me a name again. Outside, soldiers aimed their weapons at the descending shuttle. Dust blew. Tension thickened. The ship landed. Its ramp dropped. A tall alien warrior stepped out, gold armor, a blade across his back, face painted with clan symbols. He spoke in Valera's native tongue, loud and clear. Widow Valera, former mate of Commander Rehan, step forward. You belong to the clan. You will obey, or we take you by force. She walked forward slowly. John moved to stop her, but she raised a hand. I must do this. The alien warrior sneered. You were bonded to a human. You have shamed our bloodline, but your children are pure. We'll take them. We will judge later. Valera straightened her back. My children stay with their father. Father? He laughed. That human? John stepped forward now, standing between Valera and the armored warrior. Try to take them, John said coldly, and you'll find out what a human is really capable of. The warrior laughed again, but before he could draw his blade, Valera moved. Fast, precise, beautiful. She swept low, disarmed him, and held his own blade to his throat. The warrior's eyes widened. You forgot, she hissed, who trained beside commanders, who learned terrain warfare, who studied tactics while raising 2 babies. She turned to her people. I was a widow before, but now I am a wife, a protector, a mother. The warrior stepped back in silence. His ship left quietly. They had no orders for war with someone who could fight like her. And just like that, the attack was over. Days later, the colony celebrated. John and Valera stood on the edge of the cliff at sunset, the same place she once said she'd be thrown from. But now she stood proud, not as a forgotten widow, not as a refugee, but as the wife of a human, and the quiet warrior who saved a world. Final lines. The children played nearby. The wind was gentle. Vel leaned into John's side. You never asked me why I really wanted to be your wife. He smiled. Why? She whispered. Because when I looked at you that day, you didn't see my broken pieces. You saw someone worth saving. John kissed her forehead gently. And you proved. You were someone worth fighting for.